you are a leader of African country. What you need right now is actually to get the foreign aids to build your economy and to restore the catastrophe caused by the local wars or maybe some conflicts. And if the United States pull out the support, China will just come in and say, hey, this is our portfolio solution.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Alliance for American Leadership podcast. My name is Isaac Bly, and I'm here with my guest, Vincent Mao. Would you like to say hello, Vincent?
Hi, everyone. My name is Vincent Mao. Very nice to meet you.
Would you just give everyone a little bit of a background on who you are and your connection with the Alliance for American Leadership?
Yeah, sure. I have living experience in China, Japan, and United States. Right now, I'm working in the tech community in the California. I get to know Alliance for American Leadership because I've been very interested in the foreign aids program and how it shaped the global power and as well as the economic growth for the three nations. And in my research with some other organizations, like producing some articles, I have developed my own framework, and also I see that there are some great work that Alliance for American Leadership has always been doing, championing for the foreign aids program, focusing on the soft power. I think all of these are really great. I'm happy to contribute.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really want to get into this sort of your personal framework for this, but let's start a little bit on those three different countries that you have experience with. Would you mind explaining a little bit about how, in your experience, doing a little bit of compare and contrast between how those three countries do foreign aid and I guess how they do soft power?
Mhm. Yeah, I think for China, I think the goal is to build and then control the certain part of the supply chain locally and then replace. When it comes to replacement, it means that gradually replace the existing tech stocks or the Western ecosystem so that they can serve as a portal for Chinese goods to export. That for China, it always have like surplus issue, like a production surplus issue, and they're looking for to cultivating the market. For United States, we see it has done a great job in sharing technology with its allies and championing for democracy, and also actively work with the local administration to adjust their governance to make it more modern. I think those things are super important for United States. And for Japan, right after the economic bubble in 90s, Japan has taken a path to focus on the long-term technology training for a lot of the countries that receive Japanese foreign aids in order to secure the supply chain, secure the resources, and then they take the path of long-term maintenance, basically lock the supply chain. I would say for these three countries, I think China's policy have been changing a lot since the 2015. I think before the 2015, they are more taking on the low-hanging fruit, which is exporting the infrastructure, agriculture, and the road building technologies. But most recently, we do see that because of the advancement in AI, 5G, and cloud computing, these become one of the key focus. Actually, in one of the, I think, a political bureau committee meeting, I think Chinese President Xi Jinping also mentioned that this is going to be a critical component in his versions of Chinese Dream, which is to basically set the Chinese version of Chinese Dream as a standard for all other those countries who receive the foreign
Hmm.
aids. I think that's definitely a huge change for China.
There's a couple of things I found really interesting in there, which is a segment of sociology, which is called developmental studies. And there's a long tradition of modernization theory, which is that sort of end of history as countries develop, as their economy improves, they become more and more liberal and eventually become
Hmm.
democratic. And in
Right.
many ways, China was the breach with that norm. And coming out of the 1990s, there was this great wealth. But
Hmm.
in the early 2000s, they were the size of the Italian economy. And now they're on par. And in many ways, if you adjust for purchasing power parity, they're larger than the US economy. So they do have a lot of the technology of modernity, but they're not a sort of liberal democracy as we would understand them I think there's
Yeah.
something to that question of, is there a modernity that is inherently liberal, or is there a Chinese modernity? And I think something you honed in on there is part of this foreign aid program isn't just leveraging their wealth to create new markets because their own internal market is relatively small because of just how they manage their currency. That would be my understanding. And that a lot of that is also about exporting a Chinese modernity and a sense of a Western imposition of a Western way of thinking.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that and thinking about this in the technological sense as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think first, I definitely wouldn't say Chinese market is small, right? It is
Yeah.
1.4 billion people, is a lot. But in the past 30 years, after China opened up its gate to the rest of the world, after the internal political reform in 1978, it basically only adopts the export model. So that's why they overproduce. Right now, it has surplus, but the
Yeah.
domestic demand is still very big. So that's why a lot of American company putting pressure right on the policies that really impact their ability to get the cheap Chinese goods. Another point, I think you mentioned that's exactly right. I think the rise of China actually contradicts with a lot of research, right, or traditional research that when you become more wealthy, you actually become more liberal. I think the Chinese part is very different. I think fundamentally it's very cultural. I think it has a very long history of a large land and large group of people ruled by authoritarian regime. It has always been that case. And if there is any liberal component, it already happens in the wartime when the country was broken into many pieces, and there are certain pieces are more liberal. So I think that is fundamentally the issue of Chinese model is like it follows the path that they have been doing for maybe at least 5,000 years. Taking that into consideration, right? I think that explains why a lot of like I think foreign policy analysts like misjudge the Chinese development plan. I think initially we were hoping it would take a very different way, just like a Soviet Union, right? Or maybe at least like Japan. But since
Yeah, something very, like, technocratic and universal in a way that in reality you might say that as part of the sort of foreign aid scheme, China can often present a very real alternative to a liberal democratic order.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you look at the narrative, I think Chinese government has been using right now is like they're not saying that we want to export socialism or communism anymore because they know that these two words are very are big flag, right, in the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and they are actually create their own words. For instance, they started with Chinese characteristic socialism, right? They label it very characteristic so they can do whatever they want within that framework. But right now, they are actually preaching Chinese dream. So what is Chinese dream? So their narrative is that we are able to help you to grow your economy very fast as possible, and you are able to build and you are able to make money, and that's Chinese dream. It's very appealing compared to American dream in some way, like in our foreign aid program, we help them build the governance, we help them build the road as well. But Chinese own rising actually is very appealing for people who want to follow the same path. And by using foreign ads, I think China actually are feeling that. So, for instance, they work actively with African countries to build the road, and also a lot of the telecom system actually were built by Huawei, right? And some of the data actually flew back to Chinese server. And also, they also work with a lot of ports with a railway, for example, in Gango, and they are able to acquire some of the mineral resources. I think they're doing that actively and also very cheap because of the Chinese labor and also Chinese manufacturing supply chain also tag along. So I do see that it is a growing issue for the West in general, as and they're helping the local government building the infrastructure and doing the Chinese dream, the democracy, the Western world of governing, will be forgotten by the local administration because they're going to take money from China, right?
I want to dig into one of them, which is we talked a lot about sort of this end of history moment, which is feels very distant these days. But
Mhm.
foreign aid, I think, is more important than ever with the return of what the people in the Pentagon would call great power competition. And I was just curious if you could sort of articulate that, because I think people often think of great power competition in terms of very hard factors like missiles, aircraft,
Mhm.
and tanks there. But in the case of a growing competition, where's the role of foreign aid there? Is it more important now? Is it less important?
Yeah, it's definitely more important. If you look at the history, right, after the Soviet Union's collapse, right, in 90s, United States is the single dominant power in the world, is a leader of the free world, and it lasts for many decades. But right now you have a rising power with 1.4 billion people and who are all ruled by one party and who are actually going to do whatever the government going to say to ask them to do. That's a huge difference.
It's a party state. The Communist Party is above the Chinese government in that case.
Right. Yeah. If you look at the government structure, right, actually the general secretary of the party basically own everything, right? And then you have the prime minister who's supposed to own the government, but actually the power is weakening. In the last like 20 years as the Xi Jinping is gaining power. So yeah, it's definitely more important if it's not compared to like what is happening 30 years ago. And in the last 30 years, we have been doing foreign aids, right? As I think there's some question about the cost benefit, but I think the cost benefit right now is actually very high. We shouldn't use the old like method to calculate cost benefit to think, okay, United States has spent so much money and has spent so many human resources and also the planning, strategic, planning, and it didn't give United States too much. It actually gave United States a very good like a narrative of American dream and also leader free world. But if we put that aside, what United States can gain from foreign aids right now is actually you are be able to build your leadership again, right? Not only in the foreign policy, in the infrastructure, and also in technology penetration. As you know that China is actively penetrating the rest of the world with the technology. For instance, you have the Chinese EV factories, right? There are some
Yeah.
factories are built in East Europe, where the American and the West Europe power is a little bit weak, and China quickly sees the opportunity to build the factory. One example is Hungary, right? They're actually in discussion about becoming the factory source for EV cars, right? So you still see that China is taking advantages very quickly. So that actually tells you that foreign aid is very important, and United States should strategically allocate these foreign aids like power in those areas that where you can really secure the technology.
I was just curious what you think about drawing on sort of your technical experience and your experience in with all these other countries. What do you think about sort of the changes in structures in foreign aid to address these new challenges?
Yeah, I think foreign aids have always been challenging because you have two components. One is like more like humanitarian component, which you
Yeah.
actually solve the immediate needs, like when there's war, when there is a shortage of food locally, or maybe there is some catastrophe, nature catastrophe. That's usually tackled by humanitarian aids, which is part of the foreign aids like structure. The other part is more like focused on development, right? Supporting the local government and local institution to build the infrastructure. I see that it's going to be very profitable and rewarding for United States right now, as United States has a lot of startups, has a lot of companies that are building those infrastructure, right? I
Yeah.
think a foreign aid that are able to tie that technology transition and or technology penetration would be very beneficial for United States in general, and more specifically, you'll be able to sell American goods. I know that has already been a thing for this administration is to sell American goods abroad, right? I think foreign aids can take a very big role and also reduce the government burden, right? With the foreign aids, you can actually partner with the local and also with the more like the private sector, right? Because you are kind of structuring a broader technology penetration plan or transition plan instead of just like focusing at one area, which government actually can lead the planning and then other parts can join in the planning. One example is like if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative of China, I think when it first started, it solely focused on the infrastructure. right now they are actually focusing on the AI technology, 5G, and
Mm.
EV, and they're focusing a lot on that because they know that this is going to be the competition arena for China and the United States. So they are preparing for that, and in order to do that, they take two ways in parallel. One is like keep working with EU, keep working with Australia, Canada, and with when the United States has some conflict, China will offer alternative solution, and sometimes those countries will take it right as as a lever to negotiate with the United States government. And the other part is the focus on the emerging economics or underdeveloped countries around the world, which to be honest has been always neglected by United States and by EU. If you look at the amount of money poured into that, so I think that's actually very alarming because at the end of the day, China is taking two paths. One is focused on the allies the United States has. The other is focusing on the parts that United States is not supporting or has begun to pull out of the support. So I think it is really important for foreign aids to restructure to not only incorporate more technology part, but actually focus on the places with a huge population and also underdeveloped infrastructure, so as the United States can benefit from it.
I love how you bring in a lot of these details and this comparative element to it. I think too often the conversation of foreign aid comes to sort of what the U.S. bestows on other countries rather than this very often extremely canny politics, which often leads to a lot of very strange programs where an ambassador is like doing a favor for a local leader in a way that doesn't really quite always make sense. But I like the way you sort of re-envision that. And there was a recent conference in DC, which A4AL was at. We had
Mhm.
a really incredible like turnout for that. We had a new member who had only been in the alliance for 1 month, but they're a very bright woman who actually got to attend this conference. And the USGLC is this leading sort of foreign aid advocacy group. And one of the things they talk about is the ability to redefine foreign aid utilizing sort of the US multilateral financial institutions like
Mhm.
the World Bank, and also utilizing private capital to create this sort of self sustaining system. And one of the things that also stands out to me, and I'm curious because I know you come at this from more of an AI angle, but something that always struck me as unique, maybe it's because I'm from Minnesota, we have a very close parity with the Chinese, like around, I mean, I don't want to say AI, but I mean, in these technological fields like green energy and electrical
Mhm.
vehicles. But we
Right.
are very far ahead in terms of humanitarian technology, such as like medicine and agricultural sciences and
Right.
those biological fields. We are leaps and bounds ahead in a way it's hard to compare. And so it's kind of weird, but I consider that to be just one of the really big advantages is we're better at providing food, we're better at providing medicine and solutions in that way. And these save a lot of lives. They keep Ebola contained and they treat people who have Ebola. We can stop
Right.
diseases at their sources and all of that. And I'm just curious, like, what are the consequences from fading away, both in the terms of the great power competition and just humans?
Mhm. Yeah, you brought up a great point. I think globally, right, if you look at the technology and also the medicine industry, it's very fragmented, right? If you look, most of the high-end like medicines are either produced in United States, Europe, and some of them in Japan. So a lot of like countries, in underdeveloped region, they don't have access to that, right? And that actually creates stress for United States homeland as well. For instance, Ebola, right? I think before COVID-19 is actually one of the biggest threat is highly fatal, right? And even though it's not airborne transmission, but it does transmit through fluid. I think previously there was cases when Africa has outbreak, right? Because of international travel, a lot of folks actually land in United States, right? Some of them actually were actually hospitalized in United States. That actually creates stress at home, right? So I would say that foreign assets is not only about the great power competition, right? It's also about like making sure that we're all human and we can all live very healthy and also free from the fear of the diseases. If you look at the places where there is no foreign ad, if you look at the death rate or like the Ebola issue, is actually far more severe. So I do think the foreign ads help them and eventually will help us domestically.
Yeah, and there's a lot to that. Like I think about one of the big programs the Alliance for American Leadership is spearheading right now, which is PEPFAR, which is in three big important parts about that. Is one, it's an important part of the U.S.'s national security. I think it's called our integrated defense posture, and then it provides such a key medical resources to mostly sub-Saharan Africa that if it's
Mhm.
canceled, if it's not reauthorized, the funding isn't reauthorized in the next 4 years, you'll see something like 6 million people die of excess mortality.
Right.
This is pennies on the dollar in a way that people really appreciate and builds meaningful relationships. And one of the big advantages is we often use local contractors. We try and build these relationships with these countries and in a way that actually makes our money more cost effective and makes relationships better. And it helps open up new markets. I mean, you'll even see like Amazon talk about in some level the importance of foreign aid just to facilitate access to markets, to protect investments, to protect property rights, and all the things you need for free trade and all of that.
Mhm.
And there's serious consequences to giving that up, both for rich people and for poor people in terms of economics and just in terms of health.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think ultimately it feels like not recognizing foreign aids is a mathematical issue. What do I mean by mathematical issue? Is like
Yeah.
you are not able to quantify that effectively. It's because you are not actually doing it in a very scientific way, right? For instance, there are humanitarian part of it, right, or a soft power part of it. You can still quantify that, right, mathematically, looking at what's the, for example, death rate, for example, the benefit given to the local community, and how does that translate to United States own benefit. I think there are serious calculations that can be done, but it wasn't done. That also caused the we are narrowing the foreign as definition to to a very specific part. For instance, like for the for building the democratic society. I know a lot of my friends who, when they first heard of foreign aids, they actually didn't know United States has spent so much of money on the humanitarian side. They actually come back to me to say, "Oh, foreign aids, is that something that United States gonna help them to build a road and then make the money?" I said it's part of it, but not all of it. I think there's some calculation issue in existing system that either deliberately or just miscalculated. So I think that's also something need to be restructured. And going back to your initial points, right? We also need to define the foreign aids better. I think if foreign aids is a term that is causing a lot of like pre-assumptions, right? Then we can probably do it more innovatively. Maybe it's a new foreign aids. Should we add some different words for it, right? Just to make sure it's very distinct.
I just want you to hone in at least just one more question because I want you to wrap this up also. So how does this cutting of US foreign aid lead you towards China? Just can you put us in the shoes of like an African leader in these
Mhm.
decisions that lead you to selling like 17 of your 19 cobalt mines to the Chinese?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so if you imagine, right, you are an leader of African country, what you need right now is actually to get the foreign aids to build your economy and to restore the catastrophe caused by the local wars or maybe some conflicts. We know that there are some going on right now in Africa, and if United States pull out the support, China will just come in and say, hey, this is our portfolio solution. You're going to take that from us and you're going to acquire this technology. Don't worry about it. Like one of our technology folks will help you to connect with local Chinese company. So that's how they get their goods going into the African countries. But at the same time, when the government relationship becomes so close between African countries and China, it's going to be a threat for the United States because you are not be able to come back again. Because for China, they will also set a very strict terms to make sure that they always prioritize Chinese technology. They always give some preferable term to Chinese company, and it actually disadvantage United States. So I do see that if you're a leader, you don't have choice. You have to answer to the immediate need from your local people, which is to get the money. If the United States didn't spend the money and China will spend the money, then they will just go with China. So it's very natural.
I think that's a very interesting way to think about it, and also thinking about the role of leadership in terms of setting up the design architecture of stuff like 5G, energy grids, and infrastructure, and how much you can really lay the foundations in other people's countries that allow you to have such deep structural control. If you have any final thoughts, anything you want to convey to the viewers?
Yeah, I would definitely say foreign ads is more important now than before. And the cost benefit paradigm has also shifted. So we should look at it in a new eye and in a new perspective. And it's super important not only now, but also for the generations to come.